What we're doing today is part 2, how to make some daub for the 1759 Vought House in Clinton, New Jersey. It has a wattle and daub ceiling, as well as interior walls that are wattle and daub. These are examples of the material. You can see in them, there's a lot of fairly long pieces of straw. On this one, there's actually a stick, and there's a piece of stone in there as well. So these are from 1759, they were part of the ceiling, and over the years, through neglect and some other issues that happened with the building, there was some damage to the ceiling. Both of these were made by Patrick Webb at the Vought House in early November. It is now a couple of days before Christmas in December. These are samples that we made without the addition of straw, but with the inclusion of some manure. This is cow manure we got from a local dairy farm that specializes with grass-fed cows. You can see some of the straw and fibers that are in it from the cow eating the grasses. So what we're curious to know is how close these samples are to these samples, because what we would like to do is to be able to replace original daub material with something of similar hardness and qualities of this material. These are the 2 samples of clay that we took out of the pit. We have 4 pits, but 2 of them were not very representative of the color or texture. And if we go over here, we did just a very rudimentary test where we took some of those samples, including our original. This is the original. It has been shaken slightly. We did a sediment test where we crushed the material up, we put it in water, we shook it up, and then we let it settle. And so 1 and 3 have reasonably minimal amounts of silt, which is the last material to actually land. We brought these back from the Vought House yesterday, so they're still a little bit disturbed. And you can see that this water actually eventually will come clear, and there'll be a little bit of silt down at the bottom. So these are our 4 samples from different locations. The original sample had a lot of straw floating on top, which made me think that perhaps straw was added in addition to the clay. From the 2 samples that we have from the ceiling, this one actually you can see the shape of one of the withies that was actually, it was sitting on top of that. So what we want to do here is get a sense just from our hands of how hard or stable this is. So we're kind of breaking this apart just a little to see how that falls apart. You can see there's lots of little fractures in it already. That does not look like straw that went through the gut of a cow or other animal. It looks to me like it was added. So this material can be fairly easily crushed. I'm going to take a little piece here and just kind of, just using the weight of the hammer just to see if that is sufficient to kind of break that all down. Right? And it looks pretty much like it is. You can actually see the sticks. You can see some little lime inclusions from the quicklime. It does not look like there's especially a lot of quicklime. You can see from this sample just how much straw there is. Let's break up our second sample, one of our samples, and see just exactly what kind of straw is in it. About a week after these things had set, I decided to collide them together. I was like, oh, let's see how hard they are. And managed to crack that one. I decided to leave it alone at that point, but you can see that the fissure there is still changing. Oh, there we go. The color, I would say, is nearly identical. So I think we have the right kind of clay. We can see some stone in there. This is a skinnier piece. Let's see about that one. Oh, that one seems to be breaking apart rather nicely. But what I do notice is that there's very, very little fiber in this. And for our particular purposes, we want something that's going to more closely represent that material. Let's just kind of hit this a little bit. Our compressive strength on this material is reasonably close to what we had. Now these lime inclusions are a bit bigger than what we could find in this material. We only found the tiniest little bits of lime. So it also may be that with our samples that we're going to make in a few minutes, that we'll try to really mix that material a little bit better with our hands and get it into a nice movable material that's still stiff enough that it won't shrink substantially. So you can see I can kind of crush this in my hand pretty easily. So I wonder if perhaps we could add a little more lime to this or break it up a little bit more. If I take one of these pieces, oh, there we go. But that took a bit more force. And again, even in every single piece, there's quite a bit of straw. That sample 1 that we broke up, we can break up sample 2 here. what's inside of it. Sample 2, there's some more lime inclusions, and what we're going to do right now is just to show an example that we can reconstitute this material. This is the original, the Daub, and add a little bit of water to it. Here's a piece of rock that I found before in there, a little piece of quartz, looks like, and again, these fairly sizable pieces of straw. So this is wheat straw. I'm not sure what that is, but nonetheless, it's fairly similar in shape, and we're just going to leave this kind of like that so we can get a sense of how much in ratio, visually, might be actually in there. We're going to take sample 1. There's still a rock in there, a piece of wood, some other stuff that kind of just natural to the earth material that we're dealing with. We're going to dampen this. As I mentioned before, is we're trying to get a mixture that's going to be acceptable to use to repair the daub in the ceiling that has been damaged. And we like it to be roughly as similar as the other material that's already in there. I'm going to take some straw, a little bit more. This one, I'm going to just crush this up a bit. This is our original sample. A little bit more water in there than I was wanting to have. That looks quite thick with fibers. And this material, we're making it thicker with fibers, but I would say we put even a few more in there. So it's starting to look good. A couple of handfuls of manure. This sample is going to incorporate the manure. I'm going to do one that does not have manure, and we're just going to compare and contrast the two of them. We're going to put roughly the same amount of lime into them. Okay, so this is quicklime, calcium hydroxide. When it reacts with water, it has an exothermic reaction, so we want to be a little careful with it, as well as with the dust. Add some water to this. Good boy. Step. Once this material is mixed, we would let it sit, cool down a little bit. You don't want to put your hands in it while it's hot. And you definitely don't want it popping on you. We've worked the lime into this already. Still a few little chunks, but basically it's all dissolved in there. So that was sample number 1. Now we're going to do sample number 3. This one we're not going to include any manure. We're just going to include the lime and the straw. We'll start with that. Third of a Talenti container, give or take. We're still waiting for the lime to slake. You can hear it slaking in there. But you can also see that the material has taken on a lighter color, by a little bit at least, than the one with the manure. And much closer actually to our sample, which I'll compare in a minute, once I give this a little bit more time to slake. We didn't add any sand to this, but there is aggregate in there, a small amount, from the clay. So as I mentioned, one of these contains manure, that's this one, and one of them contains only straw and lime. we're looking at our sample, we're actually looking at nearly identical color currently, and even fairly similar in terms of texture and so forth, whereas this one, you can definitely see the manure has darkened the clay substantially. Again, I'm not sure what happens to manure after 200 years, but since we're not sure there's evidence of it in there, we're going this route. Just to finish doing it slaking before we try to press it into a mold. But that is what we're going to do. We're basically going to make the second versions of each of these. And then once these have cured, stage 3 is going to be to break these open, and then compare them to our last little bit of sample and see if we can find something that, well, that looks about right. So this is our original material, and when you make it into a ball like this, they call it a cat in the Daub world. So what we're going to do now with, this is sample number 3, is we're going to push it into this form and make ourselves a little brick. Make a little cat of 3, and we'll set that off to the side. I'd like to see how it looks and performs in relationship to that one. And I'll take that out of there, set that off to the side as well, and do the same with sample number 1. All right, it is January 1st. It's been a couple of weeks since we made our samples, and we're back here in our shop on New Year's Day, 2024. Again, here is the original sample with the organic matter that's breaking down, causing the water to stain. You see quite a bit of non-silty sediment in here, and so that's what we're looking for in one of our samples here. So sample 1 is the spring house. It has a good amount of silt up here and then the sediment down there. Sample 2, a lot of silt and then a little bit of sediment down at the bottom. The carriage house 3, this is our silt up here. Fair amount of the sand kind of down here. It looks very similar, in my opinion, to the original. And so that's the one we're going for. And then the fence also has quite a bit of silt at the top. And then a fair amount of sand. So I think we've decided, based on the color of the objects and our testing. Back to the samples. These are reconstituted versions of what we had done of the original, and then that's the actual original without reconstituting it. So I'm going to break those apart in a second. These are our smaller samples that we made. And crack that open a little bit. Oh yeah, and you can see the straw is holding on. It wants to hold it together, so that's a pretty good sign. And then this is number 3. Oh yeah, I can feel the resistance. The straw is really helping to hold it together. Quite a bit, in fact. Adding straw is going to be a for sure. They go without manure. And then we open this up to see about lime inclusions. You can see a little bit of lime in there, a few little lime inclusions. We did mix the lime into it pretty well. So 3 is the carriage house. The old carriage house was. So I think that either there or the spring house would be acceptable from a collection perspective. I'm just going to crack this one open because this is original reconstituted. So I cracked that. Ooh. But you can still see all the straw in there. That's pretty good. Still pretty hard, pretty firm. Doesn't crush easily, you know. That definitely does not crush easily, so that's good. That's the extent of our research to this date. We do have a Daub that we can continue to do repairs with based on materials that are going to be predominantly collected from the field. Straw, lime, clay, and some water. And a whole lot of work.